Uh-oh. I just hit to go live, and then I realized I forgot to do my diction exercises first. So we're doing a live reading of my book, We Can Do This, Overcoming the Political Divide and Creating the World We Want to Live In, which is really the intersection of spirituality, logic, and politics. And kind of the mission is one of the core arguments is that I think whether we consider ourselves on the left or the right, we want at a high level the same things. We just disagree on how to get there, and we disagree on some of the values. But there is a place where we can find common ground, and we can unite, and we can use our creativity to learn from each other and talk to each other and accomplish things together. And so, and one of the things I say is that we want a society where people can be happy, healthy, prosperous, and safe, where the economy is thriving, ditto the planet, and I'm throwing in for good measure secure elections as well, so we know who actually wins the elections, and a small, efficient government as my bonus. And those are basically the chapters that are remaining. So today is about prosperity. We did happiness and health, and next one is going to be safety. And then we're going to talk about a thriving economy, and then we're going to talk about a thriving planet, and then we're going to talk about a small, secure elections and a small, efficient government, and then my conclusion. So that is that's what's remaining. We are on page 214. So that's it. But let me have you enjoy some of my diction, a quick diction exercise to get my lips going. So here we go. You ready? You ready for this? Betty Botter bought some butter, but she said this butter's bitter. If I put it in my batter, it will make my batter bitter. So she bought some better butter, better than the bitter butter, and she put it in her batter, and it made her batter better. Red leather, yellow leather, yellow leather, lime leather, lavender leather. You probably say that more times, but hey. Good blood, bad blood, good blood, bad blood, good blood, bad blood. Unique New York, unique New York, unique New York. Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers, a peck of pickled peppers Peter Piper picked. If Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers, where's the peck of pickled peppers Peter Piper picked? There we go. There you have it, my friends. This is you can do this along with me as your daily diction exercise. It's always going to be good. So, wait. Damn it. I just missed it. So this Microsoft Word thing is going to say, welcome back, but you have to click real quick to see. To get it. All right. That was too far. Sorry, I should have done this before I hit and record, but I didn't. So here we are. There we go. Come on. There we go. Prosperous. All right. So if we want a society where people are prosperous, what does that actually take, right? What does it require for a society that enables people to be prosperous? That is the big question, and that's what we're going to dive into today. You guys ready? 1, 2, 3, let's go. Prosperous. Prosperous. We want for people to live a life of prosperity, a life where we have access to the resources we need when we need them. Some years ago, I heard Gay Hendricks say something that really stuck with me as just the truth. You'll never have enough money to buy all the things you don't really need. And you'll never have enough time to do all the things you don't really need to do. As we say, we all fall into the trap. No, as we saw, we all fall into the trap of thinking that if only we had this or that material thing, then we would feel fill in the blank, good enough, okay, safe, worthy, loved, whatever it is. It can be a house, a car, money in the bank, a flat screen TV, a spouse, a lover, a child, really anything. The dream car. For me, it was a car, a BMW Z4. I dreamt about that car for over 10 years. In 1999, I moved to the US and got a job for a software company named Ars Digita. They had an office in Berkeley where they had a BMW Z3 that I got to drive when I visited. It was such a great car. I loved it. Driving up and down Highway 1 along the California coast with my hot girlfriend. It made me feel so powerful, strong, free, masculine. I'd arrived. I'd made it. I was the man. Sidebar here, by the way, I saw the other day that Highway 1 is still not open at Big Sur. There was this like mudslide or something, and it's been closed for, what was it, 800 and something days. That's over 2 years that we haven't been able to just reopen a freaking highway. Like, that's not a functioning society. That's not a functioning state. That's not a functioning government. It's crazy, guys. We got to do better, and it requires men to step up and do better. Men, you gotta get your shit together. You gotta heal that boy, build that strength, find your purpose, your meaning, your leadership, so you can lead us to better times. Because right now we're led by fucking morons. I'm telling you. Generally speaking, we're led by morons. They can't even open us a road for over 2 years. All right, back to the script. After moving back to Denmark, I dreamt of that car for years. In Denmark, I started the business, and for the first couple of years, it went really well. But then I started to struggle financially. In Denmark, cars are marked up by about 100%. In Denmark, cars are marked up by about 180% in taxes and registration fees. So buying my dream car was way out of my reach. Knew it would be around 200,000. Knew it would be around $220,000 after you've paid the world's highest marginal tax rates. Impossible. When I was finally able to get back to the US in 2011, one of the first things I did was buy a used BMW Z4, the current model of the same car. Space gray, so fast, so beautiful. I remember driving down Highway 1 with my new hot girlfriend, with the top off, slowly passing two young guys on their skateboards. One yelled out, "Nice car!" The other yelled out, "Nice girl!" I felt on top of the world. Every morning, I'd walk out of the motel we were staying at, because we were pretty broke despite the fancy car. The car was part of an investment for my E2 visa application. So I'd go down to the car and just take in the beauty of that thing. Every time we came out of a restaurant and were walking towards the car, I'd look around the parking lot and confirm that there was no other car in the entire lot that I'd rather own than mine. It was so cool, so sleek. I was beaming. I felt like $1 million. Then one morning, exactly 2 weeks to the day after I took possession of the car, I came down the stairs from our motel room and something really strange happened. Nothing. I looked at the car and I didn't feel that jolt of electricity shoot up through my body. That's weird, I thought. And I went back up to the room and back out and down the stairs. Same thing. No jolt. I blinked and looked at the car again, and it was just a car. A nice car, a beautiful car, but just a car. A piece of metal on wheels that would transport me from place to place, making nice sounds, feeling good to drive, but it was still just a car. It completely shook me. I dreamt of this motherfucking car for over 10 years. I finally got it, and the feeling lasted for just 2 damn weeks. Come on, man. I figured it wouldn't last forever, but it could have lasted at least for a year, a month, even 2 weeks. That's all I got. Money only solves money problems. It taught me a really important lesson. No material possession will ever fill up an emotional void. It cannot. It can mask it for a short time, but emotional voids need to be filled from the inside, not the outside. When it comes to prosperity, this is a really important thing to keep in mind. It's a feeling. Money has little to do with it. We think that we will be happier when we have more money. We think we will make other people happy by giving them more money. We won't. Billionaires are often among the most miserable people. Billionaires are often among the most miserable people in the world. I'll never forget an email I got in 2010. I'd started blogging, remember blogs, they used to be a thing, about my personal growth journey. And this guy named Eric from San Francisco randomly emailed me one day. He told me his story of how he co-founded a mobile social gaming startup, and they'd done really well, to the point where they had now received an acquisition offer for $300 million. And yet he was more depressed than he'd ever been in his entire life. Why? Because his entire adult life he'd fantasized about and worked towards this day, the big payday, the big exit, make a truck ton of money and be set for life. Sip margaritas on the beach. You've made it. You've arrived. And now that it was within reach, he realized he was still stuck with himself. All of his feelings, all of his fears, his inadequacies, all of his feelings, all of his fears and insecurities, his low self-esteem, they were all still there. The money solved none of this. And now he was even worse off. Because his previous strategy for how he thought he was going to solve these problems had proven to be a mirage. And that freaked him out. Problems with a strategy equals hope. Problems with no way out equals misery. Money only solves money problems. They don't fill your emotional void. You can use them to help solve emotional problems. You can buy books, therapists, and coaches and go to events, but you're the one that has to do the actual work. Like my mentor Gay Hendricks says, money can buy you a ticket to outer space. For a mere $450,000, Richard Branson will take you there, but no amount of money will take you to inner space. Others can help, but you have to make the journey yourself. So when it comes to wealth, you have to put it in its proper context. It's about a feeling of abundance, of having faith that our needs will be met. In 2014, I went to Burning Man, and one of the things I remember is the phrase, the playa provides. It means to not worry about having your needs met and to trust that when you need it, someone will provide it for you. Whether that is indeed quote unquote true or not, believing it makes you more open to seeing and receiving opportunities for others to provide for you. Just like people who consider themselves lucky are more likely to be lucky because their eyes are more open to the luck that's available to them, which in turn makes them more lucky. How to build wealth. Now that we understand the role that wealth rightfully plays in life, let's look at how to create financial wealth. And as is often the case, the answer is simple, but not easy. You make money by providing value to other people in a form that they're willing to pay for. That's the foundation of everything. The question to ask yourself is, how can you use all of your talents and skills and gifts to provide as much value for other people as possible in a way that feels effortless to you, that brings you energy and joy, that makes you feel alive and gives your life meaning and purpose. This is the big question, and the answer will naturally change over the course of your life. In the beginning, you need to acquire skills. You go to school, you read books, you let your curiosity lead you to study topics on X, YouTube, and other online platforms. You find other people with the same interests and learn from and with them. And you get a job. A job is often the fastest way to learn. My first job out of college was for a US-based company named Arstigida, the company that had the BMW Z3. My first day at work was with Branimir at the Siemens office in Zagreb. Long story. I learned more actually useful skills in the first 2 weeks with the Branimir than I did through 5 years of computer science at university. Seriously. Minimum wage. This is why I think minimum wage actually hurts young people who want to enter the job market. Because at the beginning, you simply might not have the skills to make you worth $20 or $15 to make you worth $12 or $15 an hour or whatever the minimum wage is. I'm sorry, but it's a fact. Instead of getting a job at $5 an hour or $10 an hour so you can learn and increase your skills to make you worth $12 or $15 or $20 or $30 or $50 or $500 an hour, you're shut out of the job market altogether, and it's up to you to study on your own with no pay. And we know most won't do that. Meanwhile, it incentivizes companies to automate the lowest paying jobs. Once built, a machine has no sick days, needs no overtime, there's little turnover, no training, no unions. It's much better for the employer. So even though we institute minimum wage out of compassion, it ends up hurting the people we want to help. Same as affirmative action and other ways we meddle with the market. It's a pure hero move in the drama triangle. It makes you feel good at the expense of the very person you wanted to help. You're unknowingly sacrificing the weakest among us so you can feel like a good person. I'm not judging you. I know you want to do good, but we have to do things that are actually good, not just things that look or feel good. Please, let's do better. Marketable skills. I was fortunate to acquire the highly marketable skill of programming early on in my life. My dad taught me. He taught my brother too, but I was the one that really caught the bug, where my brother more caught the bug of playing computer games with his friends. We'd sit in a room, him and a friend or two on their Amiga computer and me alone on my PC writing software. But most people won't have a specialized skill like that, and so they need to find some way to trade time for money. Store clerk, waiting tables, warehouse packer, handyman, assistant, whatever. The purpose is not just to make money. The much more important purpose is to acquire skills that increase your market value. Follow your passion and your curiosity. Do you want to be a leader, a technician, a communicator? There's a million different directions to go. The important thing is to find something you're naturally passionate and curious about and pursue that. Something you'll want to study on your own time. If you haven't found it yet, keep looking. If you feel depressed or hopeless, then that's the first thing you need to address. It's solvable. The solutions are out there. Just look for them. This is you investing in yourself. You'll continue to invest in yourself for the rest of your life. So better get to it. Financial freedom. Eventually, you'll want to get out of the game of trading your time for money. You can do this by starting a business, by getting into a royalty agreement, by getting equity in a business, or by saving and investing the money that you earn from your work. No matter how much money you make, you'll want to get in the habit of saving. Take a percentage of your income and immediately put it into a savings account, ideally in another bank so you never see it. Every once in a while, you transfer that money into some form of investment. The goal is to accumulate enough money that an annual return of 5% will pay for all of your living expenses. At that point, you have achieved financial freedom. As long as you keep expenses in check, you'll never have to worry about producing an income again. If you live on $10,000 a month, that's $120,000 a year. That means if you have savings of $2.4 million, then you can live off of the return alone, so long as your expenses stay below $10K a month. If you live on less, it's obviously a lot less. Why 5%? Because that's a return that you can typically get with a very low risk, such as treasury bonds or money market accounts. We have to make sure this is attainable for everyone. Let me do that over. We have to make sure that this is attainable for everyone. I've far from been a great steward of money myself, which is why I'm so passionate about making sure as many people understand the game as possible. Nobody really taught me how this works. I used to dream of having so much money I'd never need to look at a budget ever again. Then one of my friends sold his company for $200 million. And talked about the importance of having and staying within a budget. And I realized that I'd been lying to myself. There will never be a time where you want to not live with a budget for your personal finances. Get used to it and learn to love it. Discipline is freedom, not punishment. Risk profiles. All investments involve a risk and a potential return. There's often, but not always, a correlation between risk and return. There's also a question of timelines. Stocks have, over long enough periods of time, always performed well. It'll go up and it'll go down, but if you invest in an index fund and you don't sell, you will historically have done well over the long term. Past performance is never a guarantee of future returns, but is all we've got, as we haven't yet learned to see into the future with certainty. The younger you are, the more risk you'll typically want to take because you won't need the money for a while. So you can ride out the downs in the market and you have time to make up for it if you do incur a loss. As you get older, you typically want to take less risk for the same reasons. The magic of investing lies in compound interest. If you can get a 7% annual return, as is typical for the stock market, when adjusted for inflation, after 10 years, your return is not 170%, which would be 10 years times 7%, but rather 197%. You end up with almost double your money in 10 years. That's pretty good. The higher the return and the longer you stay in, the more it compounds. Math never lies. This is the path of wealth creation. No amount of wishing it to be different will change this. Find a way to scale your income independent of your time. Build up enough savings that you can live off of the returns. When I hear about families that wouldn't be able to pay their mortgage or buy food if they lost their paycheck, I feel empathy. That's terrifying. It's also their responsibility. They're simply living beyond their means. If they had more money, I bet they'd spend that money too. It's a mindset. If you're living off salary income and you don't own a business, you have to find a way to save money. It doesn't matter how little money you make. It doesn't matter how little you save. Even if it's just $1 a month, get in the habit of saving. Instead of it feeling like denying yourself this nice thing you want, think of it as investing in yourself. It's self-love. Money mindset. Poor people are poor because of their beliefs, not because of a lack of money. The mindset is what causes the lack of money. Giving a poor person more money doesn't change their mindset. It will not make them rich. They'll find a way to spend the money and they'll still be poor. It's a mindset issue. Trust me, I've been there. The unconscious belief might be that I'm not worth having money, so I need to give it away as fast as I can. I've had that for most of my life. It might be that I need something I don't have and maybe can't afford in order to feel good enough, or to fit in, or to feel safe. I have that too. I have that too. It might be a belief that you're broken somehow and having this thing would fix it. I've been there too. You might have a belief that getting rich is bad and that money is the root of all evil, and so of course you'll want to get rid of it. No matter what the set of beliefs, the beliefs are what causes your financial situation. Address the beliefs and the wealth will start to build. I'm not saying any of this to shame poor people because I don't have compassion. I do. I'm saying this from a place of love. In order to solve it, we have to look at the real problem. Let's do it this way. In order to solve poverty or inequality, we have to look the real problem straight in the eyes. It's not their fault that no one has told them this straight, and no one has taught them how to master money. But it is their responsibility to address it. Just like your health can never be the government's or your doctor's or anyone else's responsibility, so your wealth can never be anyone else's responsibility either. It's yours. And that's powerful. It means you're the creator of your life, the author of your life. It puts you in a position of power, not victimhood. Feel the power. Own it. That's freedom. Why welfare never works. The problem with any welfare program is that they always implicitly incentivize the exact outcome that they're looking to address. Take this SNAP program, aka food stamps. To be eligible, you currently have to make less than $3,000 a month and have assets below $2,750. Sounds compassionate and good. We don't want people to go hungry. What we've just done, though, is to create an incentive for people to make sure they don't earn more than $3,000 a month and to not save or invest. How's that a good thing? I get that we want to help people in need, but when you create a government system like that, when you create a government system like this, it has to have fixed rules, and it will be managed by people with no emotional investment in the people that receive the money. The government's management of the program will be inherently inefficient and wasteful. The government's management of the program will be inherently inefficient and wasteful. You have to pay administrators to administer it. They'll do it imperfectly. It all adds to the waste. So for every dollar you take from one person to give to another, you're now wasting some of it and incentivizing the recipient to stay needy. What if instead we reduce the government? Let me just back out here and say, well, you might say like $3,000 a month and $2,750 in assets. Yes, of course, if you're like making $10,000 a month, like you're not really incentivized to go down to $3,000 in order to get the food the food stamps. But if you're borderline, right? If you're like, oh, I'm like at 2,900 and I could take this gig that would make me 500 or maybe 1,000, you're like, but then I'd lose out on the food stamps. I actually don't know how much they get in food stamps and how that works. But there's going to be boundary conditions where you're actively incentivizing people to stay below that, right? And if we want people to build up assets, then like, okay, I can set aside like $50 a week or $25 a week or something. It's like, great. We start to build some wealth that we might be able to invest. But then as soon as you get close to the $2,750, you have to be like, well, I got to go spend this money now. So I don't save up anything because otherwise I wouldn't be eligible. Until you get to a point, I suppose, where the number's so big where you're like, okay, fuck it, I'm going to screw the food stamps. But you're going to be incentivized to stay there like for a long time. And I bet that some people end up doing that, right? People aren't thinking necessarily that long term and that strategically. And so it's just like, fuck, like they just kind of condition themselves to like stay under that level. I haven't studied the food stamp program specifically to see this. I'm just using it as an illustration, but I bet that if we were to investigate and really get under the hood of how people think and how people behave around it, that we would find these behaviors. I don't know what percentage of people exhibit these behaviors, but I would guarantee that we see them. widespread enough to be meaningful. All right. All right, back to the manuscript. What if instead we reduce the government budget to, say, less than 10% of the total economy and let individuals handle this? Humans are naturally compassionate. Churches and other religious institutions have always been great at providing for the needy. Local organizations of all kinds, too. But then, instead of a nameless, faceless, wasteful, bureaucratic organization running it by taking other people's money by threatening violence, which is what taxes are, it could be people voluntarily donating their time and money to take care of the needy. All right, I'm going to reread that. The whole paragraph is one sentence. But then, instead of a nameless, faceless, wasteful, bureaucratic organization running it by taking other people's money by threatening violence, which is what taxes are, it could be people voluntarily donating their time and money or food or other items to take care of the needy. An added benefit is that now there would typically be a real person there with a real relationship to the recipient who could look after their true interests and support them in becoming independent of the need for assistance. The purpose of helping others is to free them from the need for help, not to keep them enslaved and needy. Not to keep them enslaved and needy. Normal people can and must take care of themselves. Let's make people normal again. All right. That was that chapter, my friends. What do y'all think? Yeah, loving it? I'm loving it. All right. Why don't we do another one? 223, safe. It's a warm day here in New York. Yeah, let's do one more. Safe. Safe. What does our government need to do in order to make us safe? What does our government need to do in order to make us safe? Well, safety is both a fact and a feeling. For factual safety, we need the government to defend the nation against foreign invasions. For factual safety, we need the government to defend the nation against foreign invasions and to protect us from each other. The military and border patrol does the first, and the police is responsible for the second. Emotional safety is important too, but like with happiness, it's not a job for the government. That's on us. Policing. I think most normal people would agree that we want the government to prevent others from harming us, murdering us, and taking our stuff. However, the waters have been muddied a bit lately. I think part of it is game playing that are hidden from many in the public. Okay. Trying to understand what I'm saying here. I think part of it is game playing that is hidden from many in the public, and part of it is a conversation we can have about values and how we want the laws. Okay, just to edit that sentence for clarity here. I think it's part game playing hidden from most of the public and part a conversation we can have about values and what we want the laws to be. I've seen a lot of reports of Soros-funded district attorneys who will not prosecute criminals. This means the police will arrest someone for committing a crime and that person is put right back on the street. The criminal commits crime after crime and nothing happens to them. Let me just rephrase that a little bit here. The criminals commit crime after crime and nothing happens to them. The police get frustrated because they cannot do anything if the criminal is not prosecuted. The citizens get harmed either physically or because their stuff gets stolen. I've seen reports that in many drugstores in San Francisco, even something as pedestrian as toothpaste is now locked away because criminals just come in and take it. This is partly because of Soros DAs, partly because of a law that says that stealing anything under $950 cannot be prosecuted. It's not like the criminals can't do math. They know that so long as they get to stay... Excuse me. They know that so long as they stay below that level, they can steal and nothing will happen. Who's paying the price for this? Businesses pay because they lose inventory. Even though they're insured, these losses will be baked into the cost of insurance. Consumers pay because they'll have less choice. It's more of a hassle to buy stuff, and they'll have to pay more to cover the costs to the businesses. And they'll have to travel further as stores close because they cannot survive the added costs given their already low margins. How is it fair that businesses and consumers pay for the theft of criminals? It is, of course, not fair at all. I think we all agree in principle that theft is wrong and should be illegal. So why do we let it happen? I think for a couple of reasons. I think some people feel bad for the thieves. They think that the thieves are just poor, unlucky people who got a little bit behind, and if they can just be allowed to take some clothes and some toothpaste, they'll be okay. Some people in power obviously want the crime. In New York City in the 1980s, crime was way up. Rudy Giuliani came in and enabled the broken windows approach where he'd prosecute even the smallest crime, like riding the subway without paying, and crime went way down. It was called the broken windows theory. Oh, I just said that. All right, let's do it this way. The reason it was called the broken windows theory is that if you leave a car in the street, it can sit there for a long time untouched. But the moment someone breaks a window, though, in 24 hours the car is stripped apart. The moment someone breaks a window, though, in 24 hours the car is stripped apart. Crack down on small crime and it trickles up. We're doing the opposite right now, and it has to be intentional. The purpose of a system is what it does. Why do they want this? A theory on the right is that when there's high crime, people demand tougher measures from the government. High crime becomes a way that you get the people to demand a police state, which is what the blob wants. Total control, total tyranny. There's a term called anarcho-tyranny, which is a combination of anarchy and tyranny. You let criminals commit crime and act overly oppressively against law-abiding citizens. This looks exactly like what we're seeing in New York City. Jose Alba was sent to Rikers Island for defending himself against an armed robber. Daniel Penny is currently on trial for manslaughter after defending himself and innocent subway riders from a violent attacker. The DA is the same Alvin Bragg who has gone after Donald Trump in New York. Even if you feel bad for the criminals, letting the crime go unpunished seems like a poor strategy for at least two reasons. One, the victims of the crime are not the reason for the criminals' troubles, so why should they pay the price? Two, teaching people that stealing or committing crime is a way to solve their problems is not setting them up for long-term success. Crime is never a good career path. Even if it never lands you in jail, living out of integrity like this will cause emotional and energetic harm. Let's teach people how to be prosperous and creative without committing crime. Integrity is always the answer. Wars. I'm talking about wars extensively in other places. I just want to reiterate that there's no evidence that America's long list of overseas wars does anything to make Americans safer or better off. Quite the contrary. I agree with JFK that the government's job should be to keep us out of wars and to let other nations live how they want to live. I don't think it's the job of America to be the world's police. I also think it's obvious if you look honestly that today's US is the world's thug, not the world's police. Borders. I believe we can all agree that we need secure borders. We need to have rules for and control the flow of people coming into our country. We can argue what the rules should be, and that's a completely legitimate conversation, but it shouldn't be a free-for-all. I also think most of us can agree that we want the government and the media to be honest and transparent and tell us the truth about what's happening at the border. Don't sugarcoat, don't exaggerate, just tell it like it is so we know, like JFK said. I think we can agree that we don't want criminals, terrorists, and human traffickers to freely enter the country. They can stay home where they are. Thank you very much. We also want to make sure that We also want to make sure we prevent drugs and trafficked children from entering the country. And we can probably agree that we want some combination of merit-based and humanitarian immigration. In merit-based immigration, we get to set criteria for who we think would best contribute to our economy and our country. In humanitarian immigration, we help people who are being persecuted or with other special needs. We won't ever get 100% secure borders, but every policy can either take us closer to a secure border or further away. The more steps we take to make the border more secure at a fair cost, the more secure it will be. Immigration is good. I think everyone agrees that immigration is a desirable thing as long as the right rules are applied. I also think everyone agrees that immigrants or migrants, whether legal or not, aren't bad people just by the fact that they're migrants or because of their skin color, religion, or country of origin. I think we can also agree that we shouldn't treat immigrants, especially illegal immigrants, better than citizens who've lived here and paid their taxes. We also don't want the government to use immigration as a way to intentionally change the outcome of elections by placing migrants who they believe will vote for them over the other party in swing states where they can determine the outcome of critical future elections. And let me just add here, by the way, that another way that illegal immigrants have been used is for the census. So every 10 years, the U.S. will count the number of people in each state. And then based on that, they will assign the number of seats in the House of Representatives. So how many seats each state gets is dependent on how many people are in the state. And for this, they, for some bizarre reason, count every person, whether they're a citizen or not, whether they're legally or not. Like the census is literally not allowed to ask you about your immigration status. They're not allowed to report to ICE or anything like that, which to me is absolutely crazy. Like, why would you do that? Like, it should only be citizens. Me here, I'm on a visa. I shouldn't even count in the House of Representatives. To me, it makes no sense that I would. I'm not a citizen. That's what you get for being a citizen, is you actually count in the democracy, but somehow it counts. So this is a way that you could use illegal migrants, place them in certain states where you have a strong majority for your party, and then you'll get more representatives in Congress that will vote with you. All right, back to the script. We also don't want the government to use... Oh, we did that. Yes. And yet, I, along with most people on the right, believe this is exactly what's happening. And the government is lying. Thousands of NGOs and individuals are profiting from this, and the media is covering it up. That's wild. Immigration cabal. I watched James O'Keefe's documentary, Line in the Sand, the other night, and it points to a deep rot in our immigration industrial complex. Migrants, drugs, and unaccompanied children are streaming across the border, being transported all over the country, and Border Patrol isn't effectively stemming the tide. And I don't think it's their fault. By the way, all of this is pre-Trump, obviously, because Trump is attacking this head on. Now in 2025, May 3rd, 2025 as we're doing this taping. If you look at the official CBP statistics for border encounters along the southwest land border, all right, fix the phrasing. If you look at the official CBP statistics, border encounters along the southwest land border, aka the border with Mexico, were up dramatically immediately after Biden took office. Here's a financial year 2021, which starts October 2020. And for those, you can't see the graph, but it's pretty flat through October through January. And then as soon as January hits, it shoots up dramatically from like... what is it, like 70K a month, and then it shoots up to 100K, and then to 170K, and then to over 200K really quickly. I think within 6 months or something. All right, see how it shoots up right after Biden took office, January 22nd, 2021? See how it shoots up right after Biden took office, January 22nd, 2021? Curious. It remains high through 2020. It remains high all the way through 2022 and 2023, and then as the election approaches, it drops down again. Here's here's 2024. And so in 2024, we see that it's up. It hits over 300K in December. And then in January, it drops down to 170, stays below 200, and then it drops down to around 100 over this in July and August. And that's when I wrote this book, was in August, or September, I think. If you didn't know better, you might think this was intentional. They wanted a lot more people to enter the country, so they reversed Trump's border policies through executive orders, told the world that the border was open, and floods of people showed up. Then, as the election neared, because they knew it was unpopular, they cut it back from the crazy high so they could claim that they have seen illegal immigration reduced by half, as Kamala said recently. Half compared to what? Oh, you mean compared to after you dramatically increased it? Oh, you mean compared to after you dramatically increased it? Definitely not compared to during Trump. Definitely not compared to during the Trump years, because as we can see, it's still at least 60% more than it was then. This is a classic way to lie. It's not an outright lie, but it's also not truthful, and the media will run cover. Another question that I don't know is, are these the right numbers to look at? What does border encounters mean exactly? How are they counted? How accurate are the numbers? What about all the people who are never encountered? Are we intentionally avoiding encountering people to hide how many really enter? Does the southwest land border leave out any important stretches of the border where other migrants cross? Or is it the entire land border with Mexico? Did anything change in how we count these numbers? As COVID taught us, we cannot trust our government or our media to provide numbers honestly. With COVID versus of COVID, infection fatality rates versus case fatality rates, counting people as unvaccinated after they receive their first of a 2-shot vaccine, which we know lowers their immunity. On and on, our government is the biggest purveyor of misinformation. They're working hard to avoid transparency. I don't trust them to tell the truth on immigration. A lot of people on the right feel the same. Using immigrants to subvert democracy. The big claim of Elon Musk, Donald Trump, and others around them is that the Democrats are using illegal and questionable immigration to subvert democracy and turn America into a one-party nation, like what happened with California after the 1986 amnesty. One of the stories that have made the rounds lately was an article from MarketWatch with this data table. And there's a table here in the book you'll see, but basically, like specifically in the swing states, percent of unauthorized migrants, illegal immigrants population is up by anywhere from like 241% to 775% in those swing states. I know these migrants aren't entitled to vote in the 2024 election and probably not in the next one either. But we do know that Harris promises an earned pathway to citizenship. She hasn't detailed what that means, but let's say that over 5 to 10 years, these migrants become naturalized citizens, and let's assume they vote Democrat by only a margin of 2/3 to 1/3, then it would be enough to solidify a significant margin of victory. And then I have a table where I make that calculation. It's pretty obvious, because the margin in these states are anywhere from $10,500 in Arizona up to the biggest one is Michigan with $154,000 vote margin. So most of them are very close, and so you don't need to move that many people before or import or that many people and make them voters before you basically own those swing states. And like when you own the swing states, you own the election, right? So and then when you know that you're going to win every year, then you own the country. You can do whatever the hell you want, just like they're doing in California, where they can't even repair a freaking highway in over 2 years, or build a high-speed train, or any of the other things that they're supposed to do, where they're just taking the money and doing nothing. Given how small the margins are in some of these states, you can see how this could effectively swing the election for decades to come, especially if the Democrats keep allowing migrants to bring their families and providing them with handouts to buy their loyalty. I don't know how accurate these numbers are. It might be a complete fabrication. To be honest, if the number of 8 million border encounters indicates that a total of 8 million migrants entered during the Biden admin, that would be 160,000 people average per state. But in reality, they're probably not evenly distributed. I'm guessing there are fewer in Alaska and Hawaii, for example. In that light, these numbers look low. There's also the question of how many people have entered the country that we have no idea of because they were never encountered in the first place. there's also the question of how many people have entered the country that we have no idea of because they were never encountered in the first place. My point is not to argue about the specifics. My point is to point out this is a legitimate concern on the right, and I think we can all agree that's not a fair play. I think we can all agree that this is not a fair way to play the game of politics. Importing new voters because you don't like the ones you have. That's not how we do things. And I think we can all agree it's the job of our government and our media to be 100% transparent and honest about what's happening. And the fact that all of these migrants have come here and that we don't know the true number or how many are criminals or the amount of drugs is a massive problem in itself. I'd argue it's intentional. The purpose of a system is what it does. Humanitarian immigration. People on the left believe that people on the right are inhumane, that they call immigrants animals and rapists and criminals, and that the right is racist. Hang on, just making some slight edits here. I think they're being misled. We all want a humane. Okay, I think those people on the left are being misled. We all want a humane immigration process, but what sounds humane and what is humane isn't the same thing. It sounds humane to let people come here. They're suffering. They have no economic opportunity where they are. Maybe there's crime or cartels. Let them come here. They just want a good life. But it's not so clear. The trip here is grueling. There's rape and death. Children are trafficked. The Biden admin has lost track of at least 300,000 children. Is this really what people want? I doubt it. How many of the countries they come from are broken because the US has been undermining them and propping up corrupt dictators for decades so they could exploit their natural resources? Sidebar here, we've seen now that USAID has been shuttered, like not a single one of those foreign countries that have been getting funding from USAID have been coming back and saying, oh, we want it back, we want that training back, because the USAID has been one of those like good sounding agencies that were actually really all about subverting the countries that they send the investment to. And it's not, it's not US aid, it's USAID, United States of America, what is it? International Development. Like, I forget, US Agency of International Development, I think is what it is. And so, like, we've been undermining, countries all over the world, we being America. So, yeah, and I'm glad that stopped now because it's fucking crazy. Back to the script. We cannot realistically house all 8 billion people in the world in this country, not even half or a third. Wouldn't it be better to support them in creating healthy, thriving societies in their homelands? Every country is led by people. Those people are not powerless pawns. They can choose their own future, but only if they realize that their neighbor is not their enemy, if they come together with honesty and compassion and integrity and decide the future they want together. 2% of a population involved in non-violent civil disobedience is enough to topple a regime. The Soviet Union fell. People have power. They can do this. So can we. Just doing my job. One of the things that James O'Keefe shows in his documentary Line in the Sand is how many individuals and nonprofit organizations profit off of the current flow of migrants. Some powerful people are pulling the strings. Yes, most people involved are just doing their jobs. This brings us back to the central theme of this book, integrity. We've created a culture of prostitutes, people who just go along with the madness even though they know it's wrong. Everybody does it. What can I do? I'm just doing my job. We've become a society of cowards and prostitutes. I'm not saying this to shame or guilt. It's been done to us intentionally. I'm saying it to make you face reality. We can do better. We must do better. All right. Holy crap. I'm on a tear here. All right. Let's do another. Thriving economy. All right. How much is left there? Yeah. Thriving economy. All right, let's drink some water. A thriving economy. Next thing we can probably agree we want is a thriving economy. Let's start by taking a look at how markets work. Something that's come up a lot lately is the idea that some evil opportunities, Something that's come up a lot lately is the idea that some evil opportunist businessmen are price gouging and overcharging and exploiting poor consumers. They just decide to raise prices for no good reason, and that's why groceries or hurricane supplies are so expensive. Let's take a moment and understand how markets and prices work, because it's important and most people don't get it. Even though I studied economics as a minor in college, it wasn't until I read Thomas Sowell's book, Basic Economics, that I fully got this. It may sound like a drab thing to get through, and it's quite a tome, but it actually reads beautifully, and I recommend everyone read it. If I had it all my way, it would be required reading for every citizen, either as part of their school curriculum or as part of a green card or naturalization process. If it were up to me, any person must read this book and pass a test before they're allowed to vote. Here's what you need to understand. There are things, and there are people making things, and there are people who want things. The people making things usually buy other things, make something else out of them, and then sell those new things they just made. When you have scarce resources such as beachfront property, New York City apartments, or milk, how do you decide who gets how much of which thing? Probably a lot of people want the beachfront property in Malibu or that New York City apartment by Central Park, but there's only so many to go around. Who gets them? The answer right now is like criminal cartels looking to launder money. But hey, aside from that, raw materials like milk could go to producing cheese or butter or cafe lattes or cream, or just be consumed as plain milk. But how much should be allocated to each kind of use? And maybe it varies by season or geography or temperature or other factors. That is the big problem. And how you solve that determines the quality of life of everyone involved. In the Soviet and other planned economies, you appoint some sort of committee to decide. They look at all of the things that are needed and all of the raw materials that go into them, and then they plan which goes where. This is very inefficient, since they have to know everything that's happening in the entire economy in real time in order to make the best decision. This is obviously impossible. Inefficiency is people getting more of something that they need. Inefficiency is people getting more of something than they need or want, while others are getting less. It's a hard problem to direct all of these things to the right places at the same time. It's a hard problem to direct all of these things to the right places at the right time, and it's certainly not something that a committee can do properly, no matter how talented and well-meaning and numerous it is. No matter how talented and well-meaning and numerous it is. Just remember, I have to charge my Oura ring here. Moreover, when it comes to the beachfront property in Malibu, or the fancy New York City apartment right on Central Park, who gets them in a planned economy? Typically, someone who knows someone. It becomes a game of politics. So if that doesn't work, what's the alternative? The alternative is to use one of the most ingenious devices ever conceived of. An invention so brilliant that it solves this problem almost perfectly and so simply that it's hard to believe. An innovation that you've certainly heard of, been aware of for most of your adult or teenage life, and yet may have never fully appreciated. What is this magical invention of which I speak? It is a price. A price. Yes, a price. Say more. Certainly, I will. The price is how we get to say how much something is worth to us. As people's willingness to pay for cheese goes up, more of the milk will be allocated towards making cheese because the cheese makers see more demand, which makes them willing and able to pay more for the milk. If demand for cheese craters, then cheesemakers will have to lower their prices or shift their production to other goods that can be made with the same equipment and labor and maybe raw materials that people are willing to pay more for. Yeah, let me rephrase that. Okay, if demand for cheese craters, well, as people are willing to cheese to go. All right. As people become willing to pay more for cheese, more of the milk will be allocated towards making cheese because the cheesemakers see more demand, which makes them willing. The cheesemakers see more demand, which makes them willing and able to pay more for the milk. Okay, maybe something like this. As people become willing to pay more for cheese, more of the milk will be allocated towards making cheese because the cheesemakers see more demand, which makes their prices go up, which makes them willing and able to pay more for the milk. If demand for cheese craters, then cheesemakers will have to lower their prices or shift their production to other goods that people are willing to pay more for. Which can be made with the same equipment and labor and maybe even the same raw materials. If demand for cheese and people's willingness to pay for it continues to stay high, then more people will start making cheese, which will increase supply and thus lower prices once again. The free market economy. The thing to understand about a free market economy is that nothing is static. It's constantly changing. Consumers change behavior in response to taste and environment and price. Manufacturers enter and leave the market and change the mix of goods. Manufacturers enter and leave the market and change the mix of goods that they produce or the way in which they produce them all the time. By the way, I don't like the term capitalism. That term was popularized by Karl Marx as a way to denigrate the free market system. In reality, the free market system is a human-centered system. It's designed around individual agency, the power for individuals to make decisions for themselves. The alternative is to have other people, namely the government, make decisions for them. I believe people are best equipped to make decisions for themselves, even when they make the quote-unquote wrong decision, because that way at least they have a chance to learn to make better decisions over time. A free market system works so well precisely because each individual actor makes their own decisions based on what they think is best for them, given their circumstances. We don't need any central planning. It's entirely decentralized. And it works because of the price. Think of the price as information. It's either a buyer selling what they're willing to pay for something, or a buyer saying that what they're willing to say. It's either a buyer saying what they're willing to pay for something, or a seller saying what they're willing to sell something for. Buyer and seller get to negotiate and settle on a price for the transaction, or not. Price fixing. This all breaks down the moment you start messing with the prices. I know, it's so tempting. Rents in New York are too damn high. We need rent control. Landlords are greedy bastards. Damn them. What happens when you artificially lower prices through rent control? Two very predictable things happen, but only every time. One, people consume more than they otherwise would. People own bigger apartments than they need. Couples keep both their apartments instead of letting one go. Maybe they keep a second home in the city that they rarely use and don't rent out, because at the lower rent they can afford to. If the rent was at a fair market value, they'd rather save the money. Two, the people who provide housing will build less and maintain it less well because the additional investment won't pay off. So you get a double whammy. Consumption goes up, inventory goes down. The market becomes less flexible, more rigid, and prices will stay relatively high because there is not as much inventory as there would be otherwise. It never works well. Price gouging. Another example is the price gouging example we opened with. When there's a natural disaster or some other special circumstance, prices on essentials like gas or generators go up dramatically. I saw stories about people selling generators at 2 to 3x the regular price following a storm. Are these people evil price gougers, just regular old opportunists, or are they providing a valuable service? Well, it's a free country, so people are free to choose to buy them or not. Oftentimes, the fact that they can charge that much more is what incentivizes people to drive through dangerous territory to a neighboring town to buy those generators and then schlep them back to where they're needed. If they couldn't charge a premium, they just wouldn't take the risk. They risk not just personal injury, but also that the generators get damaged during transport. I bet if that were to happen, the people that were interested in buying the generators probably wouldn't be lining up to compensate them for their loss. People love to hate on entrepreneurs when they make a profit, but they don't have an equal amount of concern for the losses and risks incurred by those same entrepreneurs. When there's a shortage of gas, it's actually best for everyone if prices are allowed to rise according to demand. Why? Because then more of the available gas will remain at the gas station for people who really need it to buy. If the price was lower, that same amount of gas would now be sitting in the gas tanks in people's parked cars, where it does no good. There's enough for everyone, but only if people don't take more than they need. Freely fluctuating prices are what ensures this. Root causes. Price is not an indication of the level of greed or generosity of the entrepreneur. It's a critical piece of information that allows millions of individual actors to achieve the optimal outcome for the whole by each person making the best decision for themselves, given the circumstances. Artificially lowering the price of something doesn't magically make more of it available, just as artificially handing out more college degrees doesn't make people more qualified. But just as we saw with medicine, we're obsessed with symptoms instead of root causes. If you think the prices are too high, identify the root causes. Ask yourself, are there barriers to entry for new producers? Are there too many regulations driving up the cost of production? Are there incentives for consumers to buy more than they need or hold on to things they've already bought? Maybe there's uncertainty about the future of the market or an expectation that price is going to rise further. Are there unnecessary restrictions on acquiring raw materials at good prices? Are we doing things that make it harder for producers to upgrade their technology to make it cheaper to produce? If you want to solve a problem, you have to identify what the real issue is and address that, but only every time. Why don't politicians get this? This begs the question, if price controls never work and the reason why is so easy to understand that even a 7-year-old gets it, why do politicians keep doing it? I think the answer has multiple parts to it. First off, most of them really are not the brightest bulb in the box. They don't think things through very much. If it sounds good and it feels good, it probably is good. Thinking about second and third order consequences takes a level of mental sophistication that most people frankly aren't capable of. And not because they inherently don't have the capacity, simply because they've never been taught or trained to do so. If you think you're dumb, you're going to act dumb, which makes you effectively dumb. Not inherently, but in practice. The mind is very powerful, as proven by every single double-blind clinical study. This is why I love helping people recognize that they're way smarter than they think they are. Second, most of their voters are also not that bright. Same thing. Ooh, it sounds good, it feels good, it must be good, and that's as far as it goes. Third, I think some politicians are quite calculated. They understand that the more the government regulates, the more power they have. The more laws are on the book, the more bargaining chips they have with their donors. The more confusing and complicated the rules are, the more they can hide favors and loopholes. Being calculated and being dumb aren't mutually exclusive. You can be both. Fourth, I think most of them could care less about the well-being of the people subject to their leadership. For them, it's just another career, a way to make money and feel a sense of power. Why did the bank robber rob the bank? Because that's where the money is. Why do politicians become politicians? Same reason. They control the biggest budgets, and it's very easy to skim a good chunk off the top. It's unfortunate that this is where we're at. And this is why raising a generation of men to be leaders with integrity is my life's mission. It's the only way this changes. Back to the beachfront property in Malibu. Who gets it? In the Soviet system, it's somebody who knows somebody. In a free market economy, it's whoever is willing and able to pay the most, which probably prices it out of reach for the vast majority of people. Fairness. But isn't that unfair? Shouldn't everyone have access to this beautiful beachfront property? In an ideal world, perhaps so, but in the real world, there's 8 billion people and a much smaller number of beachfront properties in Malibu. According to ChatGPT, there's a couple hundred, so we have to allocate them somehow. In a free market economy, the way that you earn money is by providing value to other people that they're willing to pay for. The amount of value you provide times the number of people you provide it to is how much money you earn. And now you get to decide how you want to spend that money. Some people really like beachfront property in Malibu, others couldn't care less. Those who are willing and able to pay what's being asked will get it. Simple, clean, and fair. The only way you would think that it's unfair is if you believe that access to making money is not equal and that you have a better idea. Of course, some people are better positioned to make money than others. It could be that they're smarter or have skills that are in higher demand, or they're born in a country with a better education or legal system, or they're born to parents who treat them better, or that their interest happens to be in a higher earning area. Their passion is for business and finance over studying gender relations in 17th century Ghana or something. Of course, there's going to be differences. Every person is different. Every person's purpose and mission in life is different. Everyone's journey is different. The idea that we should all be the same is absurd. If you really, really want to make a ton of money and you dedicate the next 20 years of your life to studying everything you possibly can about making money, and you use all of your charm and street smarts to endear yourself with the best mentors there are, chances are you'll do quite well. Complaining about how some people have it better leads nowhere. Focusing on what you want and what steps you can take today to get there, that will always get you somewhere. Like Zig Ziglar said, you can get anything you want in life if you just help enough other people get what they want. Get busy figuring out what other people want and how you can help them get that. That's the path to that beachfront property, if that's what you want. When markets break down. Markets can be corrupted. There's no question about it. It's happened a lot. Since our governments are so large, have so many rules and control such a massive part of the economy, and politicians and government actors are so easily corrupted, it's easy for corporations and others with money to buy influence. We saw the OxyContin example before. When the agency that's intended to regulate the industry is controlled by the very industry that they're there to regulate, it's called regulatory capture. It's everywhere. Regulators are cheap. When there's this much money in the industry, we need really strict laws and punishments for people who do anything out of line. The problem is that it can be hard to prove, which is why the only real solution is integrity. You're either a prostitute or you're not. Most people in these jobs are, by design. Externalities. Another failure of markets are externalities. This is a fancy term for things companies do that others have to pay to fix. Pollution is the classic example. We absolutely need to account for externalities, and it isn't exactly rocket science. As we discover these externalities, whether it's water, air, EMF, waste from used products, disease caused by using or being around their products, we have to define and measure them, assign a cost to them, and charge the company what it costs to fix it. That way, it'll be accounted for in the price of their offers, and that takes care of that. Simple. It's only when the regulators that are supposed to regulate this gets captured by the industry that this doesn't happen. Then they can get the government to close their eyes to, for example, the fact that chronic disease has exploded in the US and we don't know why. Clearly something changed, and whether it's vaccines or EMF or air pollution or water pollution or something else, it's a big effing deal. But because regulators are captured by industry and because that industry profits immensely from people's chronic illness, it's allowed to continue. Again, integrity is what's called for. There are other ways markets can fail, and they can all be addressed simply, but not if the government is corrupt. Inflation. You may have heard that inflation is a hidden tax. It is. The way it works is that the government prints more money. The way it works is that as the government prints more money, that doesn't magically make more of the stuff that we use money to buy. So the price of everything simply has to go up. You have 1,000 widgets that people want and $1,000 in circulation. The widgets are $1 each and things work out. Now add an extra $1,000 to the circulation. In the beginning, the person who has that extra money, which is the government, has it good. They can buy many more widgets with all of their new dollars. But eventually, as the new dollars make their way through the economy, those widgets are now $2 each. The people who save their dollars are screwed. Their dollars now buy only half what they used to. This is exactly how printing money causes inflation, and it's why there's been massive inflation as Biden added about $7.5 trillion to the economy. I'm not sure if you're feeling all that money in your wallet, but I suspect not. That money went somewhere, just not to you or I. We're the ones paying for it, though, at the grocery store and the gas pump. That's how the system works. Like I said, whoever gets to spend the money first stands to gain from printing it, because at the point that they spend it, prices haven't yet gone up. But as the money moves through the economy, prices must go up because supply and demand remain the same, but there's more money in circulation. It's inevitable. Since the government prints the money, they stand to gain the most. People who own assets also gain because the real value of assets remain constant while the purchasing power of the dollar goes down, so you need more dollars to buy the same house or stock. That's why you see the markets go up when the government prints money. The rest of us lose. Our savings and income buys less stuff, even though the dollar denomination didn't change. It's effectively theft. Yeah. That's actually not right. Let me just fix that. The rest of us lose. Our savings and income buys less stuff. It's effectively theft. Small business suffers too because we have to pay our people more, which requires us to charge more from customers. Something we don't like to do, can be hard to do, and will probably make us lose customers. Eventually, we have to pass on the cost to the customers, but in the meantime, we're likely to eat it. At least that's what a lot of us are doing. The Fed. Let's talk about the Federal Reserve Bank. It's quite the story. In The Creature from Jekyll Island, G. Edward Griffin documents the disturbing history of not just the Fed, but central banks throughout the world. Did you know that the Fed is not a government institution? It's a private bank owned by 2,500 member banks. It was created by Congress, has congressional oversight, and a mandate to promote maximum employment, stable prices, and moderate long-term interest. But it's a private institution. Ron Paul has long sought to end the Fed. I'm with him. I think it's one of the main ways that the blob steals our money, and is a major cause of wars. In the book, G. Edward traces the Civil War, the Communist Revolution in Russia, World War I, and World War II all back to central banks and the Fed as a way to make countries take on more debt. When a country is at war, it needs money. When a country is at war, it needs more money than it has. That money is borrowed. That means it has to be paid back with interest. The bank profits off the interest. Banks want war. Every single US dollar in circulation is borrowed from the Fed with interest. Every single one. The Fed collects interest on all that money. I haven't done enough research to fully wrap my head around this, but if it smells like a duck and it walks like a duck, it's probably a duck. My gut is with Ron Paul and the Fed. What happened in 1971? As I was writing this book, I talked to my neighbor on the couch at my local coffee shop. I'm here every morning when they open at 6:30 to secure the corner spot. I'm 2.5 hours in right now. We exchanged information and he sent me to the site WTFhappenedin1971.com. Go check it out. It's fascinating. Here's the first graph that you see on the site. And it's basically a graph that shows that one graph for productivity increase and another graph for compensation, like wages versus productivity and hourly. Yeah, growth in productivity and hourly compensation since 1948. And the productivity line goes pretty much straight up and to the right. And then in 1971, there is the two lines break apart. So they follow each other up until 1971, and then it breaks off, and now the compensation has gone up only marginally, while productivity has more than doubled since then. So what happened? So what did happen in 1971? Nixon ended the gold standard. The gold standard was the rule. The gold standard was the rule that you can convert dollars into gold at a fixed rate of $35 per ounce. What happened immediately after? Crazy inflation. Interesting, huh? Gold is a rare commodity. By tying the price of dollars to gold in this way, you couldn't print more dollars than you had gold to back it up. If people lost faith in the dollar, they could convert it to gold and store it that way. If they really wanted to, they could use gold to trade. After 1971, the dollar became what's called fiat currency. That means it's not tied to anything. It's just whatever value we assign to it. It's a collective hallucination. As long as people believe in the value, it has value. The second they stop, it's done for. As I understand it, it's why the US needs all the military bases and make sure oil is traded in dollars to make sure it continues to have the value, to make sure, as I understand it, it's why the US needs all the military bases and make sure oil is traded in dollars to make sure the dollar continues to have value to people. It's backed not by gold, but by military might. Gold, by contrast, has real value. Besides being used to make jewelry and luxury items, it's also used in dentistry, medicine, electronics, aerospace, energy, and nanotechnology. It's a real thing that people want for its own sake. Fiat currency has no real-world use. That's the big difference. So getting off the gold standard was a major key to making sure the blob could manipulate financial markets to suck as much money as possible out of the system. Since you cannot convert the dollars to gold and every business in the US is enforced by law to accept US dollars as currency, and you can only use US dollars to pay for taxes, you gotta have it if you want to live here. And in most places around the world, you need oil. This is also why crypto is gaining in popularity and why it's so dangerous to American financial dominance. Bitcoin is also fiat in the sense that there's no real world value to it, Bitcoin, but in contrast to the dollar, it's designed to prevent inflation. There's a fixed number of Bitcoin that can ever be created. That means the buying power of Bitcoin is guaranteed to go up over time, assuming people continue to buy into the hallucination that it has any value at all, like they do with the dollar today. Reserve currency status. For now, the US has the power to effectively levy a tax on the rest of the world by printing money thanks to its reserve currency status. At least that's my understanding. When the US prints more money, the US government and the blob gets the benefit, and the entire rest of the world who has to trade in dollars pays the price. It's a brilliant system for them, for as long as it lasts. For the rest of us, it sucks. Were the reserve currency status to be lost, however, the US and its citizens would be SOL, which is short for shit out of luck. They would be in a bad place. Of course, by that time, all the people who made bank while it lasted will live in their gated communities on an island somewhere, or maybe in Qatar next to Hamas's leadership. The US debt is now so massive, it'll be almost impossible to ever pay it back, at least the way things are currently going. Sidebar here, if, as Trump has been doing with Elon, the US can cut back on expenses dramatically, get the interest rates back down so they can refinance the loans at better interest rates, and then dramatically improve productivity and output, then absolutely the debt can be paid back, and that would be the way forward. Back to the script here. The US will have to default on its loans, and the economy will collapse. The roughly half of the population currently depending on the government for their income through salaries, contract jobs, welfare payments, and subsidies would be done for. Toast. Good luck. The rest of us would also be in deep trouble, of course, as the economy collapsed. And a US collapse would take the rest of the world down with it. Of course, no one wants that. China is not going to call in its chips knowing it would collapse the US economy, while China itself is completely dependent on the US economy. So that helps keep the grift going for now. But at some point, things have to break. Maybe the BRICS countries find out they'd do better without the US messing with them and pull the plug. This is all just wild speculation. I have no clue. I'm not sure anyone does. Operating systems. I do think it's possible to reverse course, pay back the debt, and get back to a world of integrity, both on an individual and national level. But it's going to require a massive cleanup on aisle one. We would have to cut back dramatically on government expenses, I'd say by at least 90%. That will leave a bunch of people out of a job, so we need to accommodate for that. But that's better and cheaper than keeping the current system going. We'd have to remove regulation and red tape and get innovative as all hell. I think if we stop the corruption machine, unleash the creative power of the people, and restored a culture of integrity, we'd be there in no time. A new golden age would be a reality. That's the vision that this book lays out. Compare North Korea to South Korea. Same people, two very different operating systems. In North Korea, there's little light, food, innovation, or freedom. In South Korea, there's prosperity and freedom. Same people, different operating systems. Or compare NASA and Boeing on the one hand with SpaceX on the other. Same talent pool, same sources of capital, Same talent pool, same sources of capital, same physics. One is way more successful than the others. Different operating systems. Our operating system in the West right now is not quite as bad as North Korea, but is nowhere near what it could be. Human operating systems really matter. It's an ambulance. That's why I've made it my business to construct an open source operating system for everything based on the best knowledge currently available to humanity. Business, health, mindset, companies, societies. This book is me laying out some of those pieces. Slow and expensive. Some years ago I took my kids to see the Empire State Building, and what I learned blew my mind. Come on. Where's that ambulance? All right. The building was built in just 410 days from when they started digging the foundation on March 17, 1930, till it was fully plumbed and wired and open to the public on May 1st, 1931. 410 days. It's less than 14 months. The Freedom Tower, by contrast, the tower that replaced the World Trade Center buildings destroyed on 9/11, took 8.5 years to build. From April 2006 till November 2014. That's 3,112 days, over 7.5 times as long. The cost to build the Empire State Building was $41 million. In today's dollars, it's $600 to $700 million. The Freedom Tower cost $3.9 billion. That's 5.5x the cost. So 76 years later, with all of the innovation in materials, techniques, cranes, and machinery we have now that they didn't have then, it still takes 7.5 times longer and costs 5.5 times more than it did then. That's utterly insane. What the fuck is wrong with us? We should be getting better, not worse. Something is truly messed up with our operating system, and I think it's intentional. The purpose of a system is what it does. The bigger the government, the more regulation, the more the blob can suck money and energy out of the system. We're all paying the price, but because it's mostly out of sight, we don't even think about it. I can see the Empire State Building. I can see the Empire State Building from my living room window. I can see it from here. I can see it from here as well. And it's a daily reminder of the insanity. And just like with the placebo effect, it's hidden in plain sight and most people are completely oblivious to it. Or they notice and they shrug their shoulders thinking that there's nothing they can do. But they're wrong. We can do something. And it takes less of us and fewer of us. And it takes less of us and fewer of us than we think. This isn't just about the building. This is about a broader trend. When everything is this much slower and more expensive, we're all worse off because collectively we're all paying the price with our life force energy. Patrick Collison, co-founder of Stripe, the payment tech giant, wrote a brilliant blog post titled Fast, where he details a whole list of these examples. The drain on all of us is insane. It's hard to wrap our heads around. But like Jeff Bezos said, your margin is my opportunity. Translation, all of this corruption and ineptitude is our opportunity to create the world we want to live in, a new golden age. LFG. And for those who don't know, that means let's fucking go. Let's fucking go, people. Let's create the world we want to live in. All right, guys, that's it for today. We're going to pick this back up some other time with a chapter on a thriving planet. There we go. Thriving Planet is going to be next, probably tomorrow or something. And then we're getting very near the end of this book. So here we go. This is how much is left. You can see right there. If you can see it. This is how much is left versus the whole thing. So might be able to finish tomorrow. Maybe. Why not? We did a good chunk today. So appreciate you for being here. Totally forgot to start. It's fine. Worked so hard to get the second camera going here so I can do the side angle, and I completely forgot to start it. So, all right, happens. All right, appreciate you, my friends. I will see you later. Bye-bye.